It all started innocuously enough. There were no dramatic changes, no sudden arguments or cold shoulders. Just subtle shifts, small changes in behavior that were easy to overlook at first. She had started working later, coming home tired and distracted. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always within arm's reach. I didn't think much of it initially. We all have busy periods at work. But the signs began to accumulate. A missed dinner here, a forgotten anniversary there. It wasn't until I found myself alone on a Friday night, with a cold plate of food in front of me and an empty chair across the table, that the nagging doubts began to solidify into something more. The following weekend, we attended a friend's barbecue. It was the first time in a long while that we were out together, surrounded by friends and familiar faces. I tried to push my suspicions to the back of my mind, to enjoy the moment. But as the evening progressed, I couldn't help but notice the way she laughed a little too hard at someone else's joke, or the way her hand lingered a little too long on someone else's arm. It was on the drive home that night that I decided to confront her. I chose my words carefully, trying to mask my growing unease with a veneer of casual curiosity. "You've been working a lot lately," I began, keeping my eyes on the road. "Everything okay at the office?" She hesitated just for a moment before replying. "Yes, it's just been really busy. You know how it is." I nodded, but her answer did little to soothe my worries. The days that followed were filled with more of the same. Late nights, hushed phone calls, and a growing distance between us. The more I tried to bridge the gap, the wider it seemed to grow. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. The preview text read, "Can't wait to see you again." My blood ran cold. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but the gnawing suspicion was too strong to ignore. I unlocked her phone, hands shaking. The messages were all there, a string of texts and photos exchanged with someone she had clearly grown very close to. My heart sank as I read the words, each one a dagger to my chest. The shower stopped, and I quickly put the phone back, trying to compose myself. When she walked into the room, I could barely look at her. She noticed my tension, asked if everything was all right. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside my world was crumbling. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The evidence was undeniable. She was cheating. The realization hit me like a freight train. I'd always believed that our relationship was built on trust and honesty. To find out that it was all a lie was devastating. Over the next few days, I grappled with how to confront her. Part of me wanted to scream and yell, to demand answers, but another part of me was too hurt, too broken to face the truth head on. I needed more proof, something concrete to confirm what I already knew in my heart, so I started paying closer attention. I noted the times she left the house, the excuses she made. I even followed her once, my heart pounding in my chest as I trailed her car at a safe distance. She drove to a hotel, met with the man I had seen in the photos. They embraced in the parking lot. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. Before heading inside, it was all the proof I needed. I confronted her that night. The words spilled out of me, a torrent of anger and pain. She denied it at first, but when I showed her the evidence, her facade crumbled. She admitted to everything, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain. "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "I never meant to hurt you, it just happened." But her words meant nothing to me. The trust was shattered, the bond broken. I couldn't see past the betrayal, couldn't forgive the lies. I moved out that weekend, leaving behind the life we had built together. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I was alone, adrift in a sea of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal. I replayed the events over and over in my mind, trying to understand where it all went wrong. Friends and family reached out, offering support and sympathy, but their words did little to ease the pain. I had to find my own way through the darkness, to rebuild my life from the ground up. I threw myself into work, into hobbies, anything to keep my mind occupied. Slowly, the wounds began to heal. I started to find a new rhythm, a new normal. I even began dating again, though it was a long time before I could fully trust anyone. Looking back, I can see the signs more clearly now. The small changes, the little lies. In hindsight, it all seems so obvious. But at the time, I was too blind to see it, too wrapped up in my own version of reality. I've learned a lot from the experience. About myself, about relationships, about trust. It's a hard lesson, one I wouldn't wish on anyone. But it has made me stronger, more resilient. I've come to realize that life goes on, even after the most painful of betrayals. And so, I continue to move forward, one day at a time. The scars are still there, but they no longer define me. I've found a new sense of purpose, a new appreciation for the simple things in life. And for that, I am grateful. As the weeks turned into months, the initial shock of the betrayal began to fade, replaced by a dull ache that was always there, lurking in the background. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects and longer hours. The office became a sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in tasks and deadlines, and for a while it worked. My colleagues noticed the change in me. They could see the tiredness in my eyes, the way I buried myself in work. Some asked if I was okay, but I brushed off their concerns with a forced smile and a quick nod. I didn't want to talk about it. Talking about it made it real, and I was still grappling with the reality of it all. Socially, I became more withdrawn. I declined invitations to parties and gatherings, preferring the solitude of my apartment. The few friends I did see tried to offer support, but their well-meaning advice often fell flat. They couldn't understand what I was going through. Not really. It's easy to say move on, or you deserve better, when you're not the one picking up the pieces of a shattered life. Despite my best efforts to numb the pain, there were moments when it all came crashing down. A song on the radio, a couple holding hands, the smell of her favorite perfume lingering in a department store. Each little reminder was like a knife to the heart, reopening wounds that I was desperately trying to heal. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit bar, nursing a drink. The bartender, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, seemed to sense my mood. He didn't ask questions, just kept my glass filled and offered a sympathetic smile. It was a small comfort, but in that moment, it meant a lot. As I sat there, staring into the amber liquid, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. It was a lot to process, and I was still struggling to make sense of it all. How could someone I loved so deeply, someone I trusted implicitly, do something so hurtful? I knew I had to find a way to move on, to let go of the anger and resentment that were eating away at me. But it was easier said than done. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, and rebuilding that trust felt like an insurmountable task. The turning point came a few weeks later, during a conversation with an old friend. He had been through a similar experience and had come out the other side stronger and more resilient. We talked for hours, sharing our stories, our pain, and our hopes for the future. It was the first time I felt truly understood, and it gave me a glimmer of hope. "You're stronger than you think," he told me. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you are. And one day you'll look back on this and realize it made you a better person." His words stuck with me. I realized that I had a choice. I could let the betrayal define me, let it turn me into someone bitter and resentful, or I could use it as a catalyst for growth, a chance to rebuild my life on my terms. I decided to choose the latter. I started taking care of myself again, both physically and mentally. I joined a gym, started eating healthier, and made a conscious effort to reconnect with friends and family. I also sought out therapy, which proved to be incredibly helpful. Talking to a professional helped me unpack the complex emotions I was dealing with, and gave me tools to cope with the pain. As the months went by, I began to feel more like myself again. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. Pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I started to find joy in the little things, like a walk in the park or a good book. I even started dating again, though I approached it with caution. Trust was something that would take time to rebuild, but I was willing to try. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey I had been through. It had been a long and painful road, but I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, love, and the importance of self-worth. I knew that I would never be the same person I was before the betrayal, but that was okay. I was stronger now, more aware of my own needs and boundaries. I had learned to prioritize myself, to find happiness from within rather than relying on someone else to provide it. Life, I realized, is full of unexpected twists and turns. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. The betrayal had been a painful chapter in my life, but it didn't have to define the rest of my story. With a sense of peace and acceptance, I looked forward to the future. I didn't know what it held, but I was ready to face it head on. I was ready to find happiness again on my terms. Months turned into a year, and I found myself in a much better place. The ache in my chest had dulled to a distant memory, a reminder of a past that no longer held power over me. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and in the process, discovered a strength I never knew I had. Work was going well. I had been promoted, a testament to the long hours and dedication I had poured into my job. My colleagues had become a second family, their support invaluable during the darkest days. I had also rekindled old friendships and made new ones, expanding my social circle in ways I hadn't expected. Dating was still a challenge, but I was more confident now. I had learned to set boundaries, to communicate openly, and to trust my instincts. I met a few women, some dates more successful than others. Each experience taught me something new about myself and what I was looking for in a partner. One evening, while attending a friend's party, I met someone who would change my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. She was different from anyone I had met before. There was an ease to our conversation, a genuine connection that felt both comforting and exhilarating. We talked for hours, lost in each other's stories and laughter. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship blossomed. It was unlike anything I had experienced before. There was trust, mutual respect, and a deep understanding that we were both building something new together. The scars from the past were still there, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as a reminder of how far I had come. Our relationship grew stronger with each passing day. We traveled together, explored new hobbies, and supported each other's dreams. There were challenges, of course, but we faced them together, always communicating openly and honestly. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our new apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below, I realized how far I had come. The betrayal that once consumed me was now a distant memory, a chapter in my life that had shaped me but no longer defined me. I looked at the woman beside me, her hand in mine, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had come into my life when I least expected it, and together, we had created something beautiful. I knew that the future held its own challenges and uncertainties, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face them. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. The pain of betrayal had been a dark chapter in my life, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. It had taught me the importance of resilience, self-worth, and the power of love. As I sat there surrounded by the warmth of her presence and the beauty of the city below, I realized that I had found something truly special. Not just in her, but in myself. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and most importantly, to find happiness from within. The journey had been long and painful, but it had also been transformative. I was no longer the person I was before the betrayal, but I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I had found a new sense of purpose and a new appreciation for the simple joys of life. Looking back, I can see the path that led me here, the heartbreak, the pain, the healing. It had all been a part of my journey. And as I looked forward to the future, I felt a sense of excitement and hope. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with an open heart and a resilient spirit. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, but it is also full of possibilities. The betrayal had been a painful chapter, but it had also been a turning point. It had led me to discover my own strength, to rebuild my life, and to find a love that was true and lasting. As I sat there, hand in hand with the woman who had come to mean so much to me, I felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. The past was behind me, and the future was full of promise. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to find joy in the simple moments of life. And for that, I was truly grateful. The process of moving on, however, was not a straight path. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and times when the past seemed to rear its ugly head. Old memories would resurface at the most inconvenient times, pulling me back into a spiral of sadness and anger. But each time, I learned to navigate through these feelings, emerging a bit stronger each time. One of the most significant turning points in my journey came when I decided to confront my ex-wife. It had been over a year since we had last spoken, and I felt that I needed closure. There were questions that had haunted me, questions that needed answers if I were to fully move on. We met in a quiet cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the baggage of our shared history overwhelming us. As I sat across from her, I realized just how much I had changed. I was no longer the broken man she had left behind. I had rebuilt my life, found a new sense of purpose, and was ready to face the past head-on. The conversation was difficult. We revisited the pain and betrayal. But this time, it felt different. I wasn't looking for an apology or a way to fix things. I was seeking understanding, a way to make peace with what had happened. She explained her reasons, the loneliness she had felt, the disconnect that had grown between us. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me understand that the fault wasn't entirely one-sided. As we parted ways that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The closure I had sought was not in the answers she gave, but in the realization that I had the power to forgive and let go. Holding on to the anger and resentment had only been hurting me, and I was ready to release it. My relationship with the new woman in my life continued to flourish. We had built a strong foundation based on trust and mutual respect. She knew about my past, and I knew about hers. We were open and honest with each other, and that honesty was the bedrock of our relationship. We supported each other through the highs and lows, always communicating and never letting small issues fester. We decided to move in together after a year of dating. It was a big step, but it felt right. We chose a cozy apartment in a vibrant part of the city, a place where we could start fresh and build new memories together. The process of moving in, decorating, and making the space our own was a joyful experience. It was a symbol of our commitment to each other and our shared future. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. We both had our careers, our hobbies, and our friends, but we always made time for each other. We traveled, explored new places, and tried new things. Each experience brought us closer, solidifying the bond we shared. But life, as always, had its challenges. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments of tension. But unlike before, we faced these challenges together, with patience and understanding. We had learned that communication was key, and we never let a day end without resolving any issues that arose. Our relationship was not perfect, but it was real. It was built on a foundation of trust that had been hard-earned. The scars from my past were still there, but they were no longer wounds. They were reminders of how far I had come and how much I had grown. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, watching the sun set over the city, she turned to me with a smile. "I'm happy," she said simply. I looked at her, the woman who had brought so much light into my life, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. "I am too," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. The journey from betrayal to healing had been long and arduous, but it had also been transformative. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and most importantly, to find happiness within myself. The betrayal had been a dark chapter, but it had also led me to a place of strength and resilience. As I sat there, hand in hand with the woman I loved, I realized that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The past was behind me, and the future was full of promise. I had found peace, love, and a sense of fulfillment that I had thought was lost forever. Life is unpredictable and often unfair, but it is also full of opportunities for growth and renewal. The betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for change. It had led me to discover my own strength, to rebuild my life, and to find a love that was true and lasting. And as I looked forward to the future, I felt a sense of excitement and hope. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with an open heart and a resilient spirit. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to find joy in the simple moments of life. And for that, I was truly grateful.